Hey friends, family, followers, and subscribers. It's your fellow man of letters and favorite Winchester brother, Bradford Sheeble here to do, you guessed it, another book review, and even better, excuse me, another Wheel of Time book review. This one is book 5 in the Wheel of Time series, The Fires of Heaven. I recently reread this, and I'm going to give a shot at reviewing it. So what I'm going to be covering today are what I thought of the characters, what I thought of the themes, what I thought of the story, what I loved about the story, what I didn't like about the story, and an overall ranking of the book, and where this fits into my overall rankings in the Wheel of Time series as I'm rereading it. So without further ado, let's dive on in. So starting off with characters, I loved Rand's further descent into madness in this book. You really started to see it in The Shadow Rising, but in The Fires of Heaven, he's starting to grapple with this persona that he needs to portray to the rest of the world of, I can't let anybody see how I'm feeling. And that is not a very healthy thing to do. He's also trying to get ready to maneuver all of the nations of the world into his pocket so that he can have them on his side for the last battle. So that's why he's trying to cut himself off emotionally from both his friends and his loved ones and his mentors, even though I wouldn't say Moraine's necessarily a loved one. She's a mentor, but she's not a loved one. And also he starts to get trained in how to use the one power more, which is not something I noticed a lot of on a reread. But you can see his progression and how powerful he's getting throughout this book, and even doing some things that he shouldn't be doing. Matt, on the other hand, Matt is grappling with what he saw in the Redstone Terangrial in The Shadow Rising, and just wanting to get away from things, wanting to run away, be a gambler, be a misfit in the Westlands. But as the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, he unfortunately is not able to get there, and will constantly be wrestling with that. I can't really say any more than that because of spoilers, so I'll just leave it there. I'm just doing a very brief overview of my favorite characters in this book. Gwen, I will mention this later, but more in depth. Gwen is great in this book, except for the fact that she kind of slut shames Rand and Matt on some occasions, while she's trying to become more of an Aes Sedai, which is really annoying. But you can see her growing level of intellect, her growing level of political savviness, and how she's reading her environment and becoming adaptive to each social setting that she's in. Moiraine in this book she's an all-timer. She's plotting a strategy that we don't really know exactly what it is just yet, but she's still behind the scenes pulling the strings, even if Rand has kind of nerfed her at points. She's pulling strings for something bigger than herself, and those are some of the things I really love about her character. Some of the themes in this book involve loss of humanity, loss of friendship, toxic masculinity, how to deal with fear, how to deal with the resources that you have, dealing with power that you've lost, but also reverse that and how to deal justly with the power that you have thus gained, and then coming to grips with your destiny and where that will lead you in the long run. One thing I was thrilled about on this reread, or a few things I was thrilled about on this reread, included the fact that this book had a lot more of Rand than I thought it did. The Matt moments were more enjoyable, and seeing how RJ was building the stakes for Matt's arc until the very end of book 14. And I really appreciated Matt's character development in this book and just his journey overall. And after both Matt and Rand went through the Redstone Tur Angrial in the Shadow Rising, they're both grappling with their destinies. Not to mention the constant finger puppeting of the Aes Sedai and dealing with the fallout from that, dealing with Egwene becoming more of a Aes Sedai figure and less of the village farm girl that they knew and loved growing up. And that was also enjoyable. And then Moiraine's overall strategizing in this book really sets up some really interesting plot points later on down the road in the series, especially with one particular character that shall remain nameless, two particular characters that shall remain nameless. Those are also great things. I also happen to enjoy the palace intrigue that you got in Andor and in Carian. Carian was very brief, but you got a lot of palace intrigue there. And then just the battles and the stakes that were presented in the battles, even if they might have felt anticlimactic at points. Okay, thank you, Activity app, for telling me how far I've walked and how long I've walked. But a lot of the issues I had with the Fires of Heaven, were that it felt, the book just literary speaking, did not have a great structure. The pacing was off, not to mention some of the depictions of women in the book, such as interactions between Nynaeve and Elaine, and even Brigitta, were really frustrating on a reread. On the first read through of the book, I didn't have that many issues with it. However, I also didn't really know where the story was going at the time. Now, looking back, I can say with confidence, and now that I can also say with confidence there's a car behind me, I can say now with confidence, the story had a great ending, but this book was tough just because of the women. And also, yeah. Overall, where this book is going is, it's merely a placeholder. And like I said a couple minutes earlier, literary structure wise, it does not follow a specific formula, and at points it is a bit of a mess. There's a lot of great reveals in it. Padan Fane in the prologue is one of them. Lanfear, and overall what she's doing, and ultimately what Moiraine was preparing for since the Shadow Rising comes to fruition, and how she's ultimately trying to set Rand up for success so that he can be the Dragon Reborn going forward from here. I did really enjoy the reveals of how they use the One Power, the reveal of just something very broad. I will leave it here. Something not seen in millennia from any channeler is something that Rand suddenly rediscovers how to do, and it is a game-changing thing for the series. And not to mention, he's realizing his own, like, as a man who can channel, he is being persecuted by the world around him while also trying to save the world around him. And it's an interesting dichotomy. Again, if, like I've mentioned in my character examination series on him, he's a commentary on toxic masculinity, but he's also a commentary on a savior figure who is very human and very flawed, and he's trying to grapple with, how do I deal with something in the world that's supposed to be good but is broken, but yet also use it to my advantage, but yet he's descending further and further into chaos and into grief and ruthlessness as a leader, and he's supposed to be a protagonist. But then also switching gears a little bit to Matt's again still trying to run away, but fate has a way of pulling him back into this place where he has to be a leader and he has to use his talents for the good of everyone else around him. And that is key for his character, because his character, he's a commentary on chaos. He's a commentary on the trickster mythology, especially with the symbols of a fox and a snake and a raven are just woven throughout his story. And it's so cool to see in this book. And it's setting him up to show that a trickster typically has a rap for being a bad guy, but in the end, Matt ultimately he wants to do what's right, he wants to keep his word, and he's stuck between this idea that he is a trickster and he's a gambler, and that goes against the idea of what the Wheel of Time actually is, and that is you can't escape your fate regardless of how hard you try. And yet here's Matt trying to run away from his fate and do just what he wants instead of what the wheel is intending for him to do, and yet he gets pulled back into it time and time and time again, not only in this book but in the 9 books to come. He just gets yanked back into what the wheel wants for him, and that's just a fascinating binary for Matt's character. And he's an all-time character, he really is. But Rand's still my guy. All in all, I think this book is great. It's kind of in a story, like it's the second part in a 3-part story that starts with The Shadow Rising, ends with The Lord of Chaos. And it is definitely a middle chapter. High highs, low lows. A lot of my lows came from the dealings with how the Aes Sedai were
doing whatever the hell they were doing.
And also how Nynaeve acts around other people, especially Lane, and that was a little tough. Not gonna lie, on a reread, it was a little tough. And also, some moments just felt anticlimactic to me, and I didn't enjoy that. So, on a reread, I still give this book probably an 8.3 out of 10. And as far as it sits in my rankings, I'd say it sits in the middle of the 14. Definitely not The Gathering Storm or Towers of Midnight or The Shadow Rising. It's definitely not up there, but it's definitely not Crossroads of Twilight either. Crossroads of Twilight is big no. Anyways, I'm going to head back to the bunker now. Peace out. Hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. There's more Wheel of Time content to come. And if you notice, there is an empty bookshelf behind me. 2 empty bookshelves. I'm in the process of moving. So those are going to be coming with me, as all of you would hope for. But in the meantime, peace out. And remember,
driver picks the music.
Shotgun shuts.